All right, let's just get going. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the Alternative Protein Project at Johns Hopkins's 2024 Industry Panel, Fermentation for the Future. My name is Julian, and I'm the VP of External Affairs at the Johns Hopkins Protein Project. And today we'll be discussing the science, regulation, challenges of the fermentation industry with top pioneers of the field. So before we begin, I'd like to briefly introduce our organization. So we are a chapter of the Alternative Protein Project of the Good Food Institute, which is a global community of engineers, scientists, policymakers, entrepreneurs, writers, and other young professionals who are disrupting animal agriculture through education, research, and entrepreneurship. The Johns Hopkins chapter launched in the spring of 2021 and includes undergraduates, graduate students, postdocs, and faculty members. Today, we are joined by three speakers who are experts in the field of fermentation. There's a Q&A panel on the bottom if you want to ask questions, and we'll leave those to the end. And make sure to utilize that function on Zoom to ask any of your questions. We also invite you to use the chat feature to introduce yourself to us and the panelists. So let's start with a little bit about our speakers. Can each of the speakers introduce yourself, your name, your role with the company, as well as the main product of your company? So maybe we could start with Beth.
Yep, sounds good. Hello, everybody. My name is Beth Clemmett, and I am a senior research and development technologist at Quorn Foods. Some of you may or may not have heard of Quorn, particularly in the US. It's essentially a meat alternative product made from mycoprotein, and yeah, we sell primarily in the UK and Europe, and in Australia too, and a little bit in the US. So that's me.
Really?
I'll go next. Hi, all. I'm Julie Post-Smith. I head up commercial for Superbrewed Food. Superbrewed Food makes postbiotic cultured protein, which is a really fantastic new entrant into the space and allows us to provide a rock solid protein star using anaerobic fermentation. So I'm very excited to be here. We are US based, but with a global footprint. So excited to share what we do with you.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Ali Manchulenso, and I represent Planetarians. And after years of experimenting with different byproduct streams, solid-state fermentation, we found our magic pair of spent yeast after beer breweries and spent beans after vegetable oil extracted, and we texturized them into meat alternatives, both having way cheaper costs than animal meat because these are two byproducts. And what's interesting fact for you, so as Quorn rocking in Europe and Asia, so we here in the United States rocking on the universities' campuses. Happy to tell you more during this webinar.
Thanks to everyone. So first, we'll try to dive deeper into the science of fermentation. So just a brief introduction. Fermentation has been used for thousands of years by humans to create beer, wine, and cheese, and so on. However, nowadays we're beginning to hear more terms used in the fermentation industry, including traditional biomass and precision fermentation. So could each of the speakers please introduce what main technique of fermentation that their company uses, and perhaps if you use a combination of several different fermentation techniques? Does anyone want to go first?
I think the sequence what we started is perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So Quorn, or Marlow Foods, which is I guess our parent name, but we trade under Quorn Foods. We use biomass fermentation, primarily because you can get a lot of protein-rich product with a relatively short amount of ingredients or input into the fermentation system. And we ferment Fusarium venenatum. We call it fermentation kind of technically is, technically isn't. But we use airlift fermentation, which is quite unusual. It's allowed us to scale up a very large amounts. So we have sort of 5 fermenters, and they have, they produce 50 tons a day. So it's very scalable, and also it means we can create a lot of protein-rich products. And we've been using biomass airlift fermentation for around 30 years now. So it's sort of our bread and butter, if you like. Yeah, and it just allows for rapid growth of the microorganisms, as I say, very efficient and scalable, a lot better for the environment than meat production, and uses sort of minimal resources. So that's our main use. We don't use any other type of fermentation for mycoprotein production. However, we do then add mycoprotein to other proteins like potato protein, pea protein, or even egg protein. So it may be that they've used, our other suppliers have used types of fermentation, but yeah, mycoproteins, biomass fermentation.
I'm going to build on that a little bit. The difference that Superbrewed Food has to the other 2 companies represented here today is that we don't have a finished product. Our finished product is the actual ingredient. So we send that ingredient into partners who take our protein and they put it into things like milk, beverages of RTDs, if you think of a sports nutrition beverage or a powdered beverage. We also go into things like snacks, baked goods, and desserts, so fun things. Places where you normally don't think about it, right? Sometimes you don't really think to have a protein fortification or a benefit in these foods, and that's what we're helping to provide. Postbiotic protein is made through anaerobic fermentation. We are also staunch advocates of that process. It's a very, as most of you know, I'm seeing a lot of PhD students tapping into the chat. So most of you are very familiar with the process. So what we like about this process is it allows us to approach a net zero and carbon negative potential by using assets that are not requiring us to do anything, requiring a lot of creation of something new in the technology space. So we're able to use a de-risk technology. So it's kind of exciting to be a part of creating a new ingredient using a really robust and sustainable technology.
Thank you, Julie. So if I describe our way of fermentation, it could be fermentation without fermentation. So let me explain you how we came to that. So we experimented. For those who are familiar with extruders, so who texturize proteins, isolates or concentrates into the pieces of meat that they need the elevated protein content. 60%, this is concentrates, isolates even higher. When you deal with byproduct streams, this is the primary source of ingredients we work with. They are way below. So, for instance, when you use the soybean and pressed oil out of that, the dry matter that's left has something like 40, 45, 50%. It's not enough to be texturized into something that would resemble the meat texture. It would be a very rough thing. So we were thinking how we can increase the protein content up to at least 60. So without isolating, because we are against the byproducts. We're trying to eliminate the byproducts. So creating new byproducts was not our thing. So we decided to use the molds, like koji, to ferment spent beans, and with that convert residual sugars and carbohydrates into well, the koji will eat the residual carbohydrates, increasing the inherent protein content, the ratio, and plus being 50% of the protein, we will create extra protein on that. And we found very good results of just changing the ratio. and unexpected benefit. So fermentation cleared the flavor, because all the plant proteins, they come with a catch of bitterness, because plants use that to protect themselves against the animals eating it. So, and in the meat industry, you need to clear that, because nobody wants to get that bitter taste in the mouth. So Koji cleared that bitterness, removed the beany flavors, and this is where I spent a lot of my work. But fermenting, especially in the solid state, because it's not liquid, it's solid state, was very challenging to prevent the cross-contamination. So, and every time I was thinking about commercial scale, how can I build this facility? It would be so much money buried there. So one day I decided, what if I get find something that now I call fermentation without fermentation. So I analyzed biomass before, I analyzed biomass after, and started looking for the difference readily available on the market. And right now you have a lot of AI tools at the hand, so you can accelerate that. That time it was manually. I found spent yeast. Breweries ferment sugars, barley for alcohol. They need the alcohol, yeast growing during the fermentation as normal. So for them, it's a byproduct stream, but for me, it was the missing piece of the puzzle. So now, all I need to just off-take the spent yeast from breweries and texturize using my extruder and deliver the same benefits. Well-texturized meat with a cleared flavor profile. So, so this is how we do the fermentation without fermentation.
Thank you all for explaining a little bit more about fermentation. So moving on to the next question. I think this is more directed towards Beth and LA, but if Julie has any thoughts, you can chime in. So one of the big challenges of the alternative protein industry as a whole is to mimic the texture of real meats. So how does your company use like some special technologies in order to improve the quality of your final product?
Okay, so one of the really great things about mycoprotein is it is made up of a hyphal network. So we ferment Fusarium venenatum, which is a fungi, and it creates these really nice long hyphae that sort of interlock. And over the years, last sort of 30 years, we've developed a way of harnessing those long branches to create a meat-like texture. So we add our mycoprotein to egg white, or we add it to a potato protein, or any protein. Some work better than others, along with a couple of other ingredients. Obviously, we would add in some flavor and maybe some emulsifiers or something like that. And it during the steaming and freezing processes, so we mix the egg in, missed a step. We mix the egg or the potato protein in, then we steam the product to get some sort of free water in there, and then we freeze it. And during that freezing step, we create ice crystals, and this builds a structure around the Fusarium hyphae that allows us to create a really meat-like texture, which means that when we bite into it or we pull it apart or we rip it up, you can see that structure, and you can also tastes like meat, looks like meat. And then we add in flavors to replicate that as well. But essentially, the journey of mycoprotein wasn't originally to build texture. It was actually to try and find a superfood, sort of the next potato, I think is how they branded it in the 1960s when they first started looking for an alternative to meat. And the looming protein crisis at the time. And actually, we found sort of, sometimes they talk about Quorn as a 30-year overnight success because we did a lot of research to get to the point we're at, but it's a really good base to then add ingredients to it and create that structure. So we're a little bit fortunate that inherently our mycoprotein already has that built-in structure in there. And that's sort of where we have managed to make it look a bit like meat.
Yeah, I can second. Inherent properties of the protein is the key. That's like Warren was lucky after screening thousands of the strains to find that. We were very lucky to find our spent yeast, and now having the and we optimized it to the best texturization machinery built. It's a high moisture extrusion. So where we simplified the process, the liquid yeast goes through the liquid port, yeah, and the spent beans goes through the dry port. So 2 minutes process, and we get the extrudate. But it's also on top of that extrudate, like Warren uses crystals of the ice to create irregular meat shape because plastic hockey puck is not something that you want to put into the. So it should have those cavities that eventually absorb the marinade or the juice, and so we have our own method, but instead of crystals, we work with a high temperature, high pressure, and we use the air pockets to create that irregular shape. Plus, we built some extra downstream hacks that so our extruder is not that typical extruder. It everything that comes already cooked, so you can place it. But in short, yeah, we simplified it down to a high moisture extrusion process.
Cool, thank you. So the kind of last question in our science section, directed at Julie. So whereas the other two companies maybe focus more on the entire process, including the texture, as like a middle person in the fermentation industry, I think one of your guys' main focuses is improving like the scalability and sustainability of the fermentation process. So can you talk more about like what kind of considerations you have and when scaling up your processes?
So a couple of comments on that. I think when you look at our protein, our output protein, the advantage that the ingredient brings to the table is to folks like Beth and Ala. And we really have created a product that has the functionality that can be used across applications, meat being one of them. So we don't interfere with the work that they're trying to do from that space. So the demand curve for our protein is actually liquids and meats and beverages and extruded products. So we have to be very cognizant of the time it takes to scale and what does that mean for us. And that was another driver for using anaerobic fermentation. We were able to identify quickly. We have the ability to run at pilot scale at our Delaware company on a regular basis. So we actually run samples out of there, but we have partnered with a company that had anaerobic fermentation capacity. So we were able to work with someone who's going to get us to scaled production in the next few months. We're running trials right now, and the volume that we're predicting for the next 3 to 5 years is at scale to meet the demands of some of the largest CPG companies in the world that have chosen to partner with us. So we are excited that we have chosen a technology that has assets available. So we're able to kind of tap into them.
Cool. Anyone else have anything to add to the scalability of fermentation?
Well, yeah, I guess we're only based in the UK. We've never built a fermenter anywhere else. But I think it's just to sort of hit home that actually fermentation is really kind of incredible. I don't need to tell everybody that here, but the scalability is definitely something above and beyond your typical sort of meat production, for example. And I think once you've got a system that works and can deliver, a high quality, consistent product, it's really sort of, you can hit the ground running. So it's an exciting area to be working in, definitely.
Yeah, to add to the scalability, I just realized that there are plenty of fermentation capability built in, but never considered for the fermented proteins. And having our partner, supplier of the spent yeast, and also our investor, BNDEF in the United States, and Anheuser-Busch. So they have the division, it's called BioBrew. They have the excessive capacity to brew beer, and they decided to allocate part of that to ferment proteins. So, and maybe not only the proteins, it may be a lot of other things that you can ferment for different uses. So in many cases, you don't need to build that scalability; it's already exists. They will be open. Well, ping me if you want an intro. I will connect you with Patrick, head of the BioBrew. He sits on my board. So and once you prove that it works, the entry scale, so you have the clear path to scale to existing capacities.
Cool. Thanks to everyone. So now we'll move on to kind of the regulations of fermentation. I saw someone put in the chat asking a question about this already. So can each of you guys like just kind of explain what are the challenges in the regulatory field with your product and how have these challenges been addressed?
So again, I'm a little bit fortunate that Quorn has been around for quite a long time, and we got FDA approval, I think it was in 2002. So our regulatory process is very robust. As I say, we make 50 tons per fermenter per day, and the challenges we initially had, I will say I wasn't born when we originally started our journey at Quorn, but obviously I've looked back in all of our history books, as I like to call them. We spent a lot of time checking that the breakdown of mycoprotein products in the body wasn't harmless, that we didn't have any allergenicity, that we didn't need to be concerned about any mycotoxins or anything produced from our fermentation process that wasn't safe for human consumption. That was, I think it took approximately 10 years to get to a point where we were really comfortable that we had a really digestible, safe product. And as I say, we've had FDA approval and approval in, I think, I want to say 7 countries for well over 20 years, which definitely it makes this question quite easy for me, in the sense that currently, as long as we complete all of our regular checks and do all of our microbiological testing, we can hit all those regulatory issues or sort of our specifications. But yeah, overall, I think the biggest one for us was definitely in the early stages was allergenicity, and making sure that it was safely digestible, and obviously microbiologically safe as well.
So super brewed food, fortunately, as well, I think you're looking for the steps to regulatory approval. There are 2 pathways in the US that a novel or new ingredient could use. One is self-GRAS, generally recognized as safe, and the other is to obtain a no questions letter from the FDA. Now, most companies do one or the other. A lot of CPG, a lot of the big branded companies prefer you have the FDA GRAS non-objection letter. So that 2 pathways, right? There's the self and then there's the non-objection or no questions letter from the FDA. So we're talking about the FDA, we're talking about the US. Every country or region around the world has a regulatory approval process. To complete a regulatory approval process in general, you must conduct testing. either in a lab or in a controlled setting, repeatable, and you have to demonstrate certain thresholds of success. And once you can quantify that through each country's regulatory process, then you receive your approval and you're authorized to sell your product, either your ingredient into a finished product or the finished product, using that ingredient into the food supply of that country. So you often will hear people talk about EFSA, or the European Food Safety Administration process. That's another big body, and you hear about the FDA. So if you are really excited and want to dig into some of these ingredients and the GRAS notices, the FDA does put them out on their website. You can actually search GRAS notices and you'll get a link, and you can plug in the company names and you can read all about the information. One of the things about regulatory approval that's fantastic and fascinating is that we all go through, to Beth's point, proof points. We all have completed the same proof points for safety and efficacy. And then the FDA puts them in a place where we can all look at them and we can look to see kind of what everybody went through and how it works. So the publication process of that, I think, is very rewarding. And we were pleased to get our no questions letter. We had self-GRAS about 18 months ago, and then we got the no objection from the FDA just a few weeks ago. And we're working on all of our around the world regulatory. So it does take time. It does take effort. It does take a lot of science proof and standardization. So it's a good process, because I think it helps you to learn a lot about your product and where you want to go next.
Yeah, and once you have it, protect from the newcomers. Yeah, that's a good thing. You don't need to be scary. That's if you really have a good product. So there is a funding for that, and a lot of accelerators like IndieBio, our the SOSV is investor in us and have the funding for the prominent companies up to 2 million. So all these things will be covered. So as you do the good technology, all that bureaucracy will be taken off your shoulders by the specialists. So don't worry much about that. But what you want to think. So we are dealing with byproducts. It's again our area, and bumped it several times with EFSA novel food certification, and also in the United States, there are a lot of rumors. There are a lot of gray area, because people do not understand the science behind that, and they prefer to throw stones into you instead of actually having the discussions. I had a very in the early days when we wanted to use the spent soybeans after vegetable oil extracted. Cargill ran the internal meeting to sell or not to sell that meal that they sell to animals to us for the experiments. Imagine that's the kind of, and is it worth risk or not? So how you can approach that before GRAS, before novel food? Just think rationally. What you're trying to use for the fermentation might be already in use, and this is the GRAS, so generally recognized as safe. So in our case, when we use the spent yeast, we tell guys, it's the same yeast as used in many flavors, the same nutritional yeast. It's just that we are sourcing from the other way. Yeah, no adulteration, so it's the same. So when we say the spent beans, it's the same soybeans, but defatted, just minus fat. So, and if you use this mindset that you're approaching the microorganism or fermentation that already was, I saw in the comments, somebody is fermenting kimchi, then yeah, it's a clear path. Don't even think about this. Try to perfect what you're doing. So there are a lot of lawyers and investors who will willing to fund those lawyers as soon as you made that breakthrough. That's it.
Cool. Thank you all for answering those regulatory questions. So moving on to more on the commercial side, I think Ellie, you have worked with like several different startups in the past, and like help with fundraising and all that. So how does fundraising in for planetarians in like the fermentation alternative protein industry differ from like the other industries you work for in the past, and what are like some of the challenges you face with that?
It depends on how cool you are. So Paul Bronson at the Future for Tech event, was shouting, "This is the best moment to invest in the alternative proteins, despite all the cold winds blowing from all the sides." So if you really has something that makes either product better or make it more affordable to people, you will be always funded. Will be always funded. But you cannot raise money without proofs. So you need to diligently go step by step. And I would highly suggest to apply for IndieBio. So through application process, you will understand what questions needs to be cleared. For me, it always application for the was the best way to learn what needs to be done. So you will be helped even in the process of application because they need more scientists to start the companies. And then you will give, well, $250,000, $500,000 just to make the next step. So, and then if you reach that technological step, they will give you more money to go through the regulatory, give you more money to run the commercial trials or market tests. Okay, so as long as you diligently go through that, there's plenty of money, plenty of good people are willing to help you. Unfortunately, bullshit is not funded. So that's so do your homework.
Cool. Thank you for that. Moving on to like the marketing. I think Julie, you've been involved in like marketing and kind of commercializing these products. So what do you think are like some of the challenges you face with trying to market Superbrewed Foods and its products to the world?
So I think that as we all enter a new ingredient or bring a new ingredient to market or a new product to market, there's always questions that consumers have that maybe we do our very, very best to understand upfront and to understand how to be prepared to answer. So I think that we are talking about a process of fermentation, a process of production. And we understand that process. Most of us on this call appear, at least from the notes and the people that are joining, understand the idea that that it's a very robust and very sustainable way of bringing food to market. And I think that the average consumer is learning quickly with us. We're educating across the board, but I think making sure that it's not a fearful process, making sure that consumers understand that we're using items grown in the ground or we're using naturally occurring bases to advance sustainable nutrition. And I think education and making sure we all use phrases that are not having someone to have to look them up. You know, when you look on the back of the label, is there something there that's, gosh, I don't know what that means? You know, making sure that we're clear on what we're bringing to market and why we're doing it. And I think that's a big piece of the puzzle, making sure that we can reassure consumers that how we're doing it is in line with what they want us to be doing.
Cool. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything else to add to like the commercialization of fermentation and if there are any like special challenges? Yeah, Alec.
So one thing you probably need to have in mind now that if you think that venture money are meant to find the risky ideas and you need to understand that it's not a charity. You need to recoup it. So and how it works is that first you need to understand that you can become $1 billion company. So that means it will eventually your product might be sold for at least $100 million. that make that so fine to try to understand who you will be selling, in which product you will be substituting your protein or whatever. That's and make the trace it back. So once the opportunity seen, so that you have that path, then they will start lining up you, give you small money, go. If you having something very small niche, you just do not give them an opportunity to recoup money and gain on the risk. So it's your job not only develop the technology, but also show the huge market. Chances that you will succeed, it's a mutual thing, but technology and the huge market. Okay? So then they will take the huge risk of your failure and provide you more money and the help to go through all those steps. So, and $1 billion, it's not the buzzword. Unicorn is not a buzzword. There's a math behind that. So that's this is not the topic of this fair, but there's a math how these multiples work. Again, ping me if you want. I can guide you through, but it's a very important thing to understand upfront.
Thank you. So we'll move on to our last little section before the Q&A. As I think everyone knows here, a lot of our audience members are currently in academia, either in undergraduate or graduate degree. So this question is to Beth. I know that you've been involved with Corn since like your university days. So can you expand more on your experience and how your company is collaborating with universities?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I started working at Quorn when I was still a university student. I was in between my first and second year, and then I've never left. And I've been there for 10 years coming up. So, yeah, we do a lot of work with universities. Fermentation and alternative proteins is an exciting area. So there's always a lot of interest from universities. One of the key factors that we've worked on more recently has been a lot with nutrition students to understand how alternative proteins and obviously particularly mycoprotein can help build muscle fibers. Can you get the same from your diet if you're eating alternative proteins to if you're eating meat? My undergraduate thesis was actually on the satiety of mycoproteins. So do you feel fuller for longer? I've been lucky to sort of get a master's and a bachelor's degree dissertation written on Quorn. So that's nice because you've got untapped potential and knowledge. We also more recently have been working with universities to look into how we can utilize AI to understand our process better, improve our process, and continue to build knowledge and information, because that's the other thing, particularly with fungi, is you can work on them for 50 years and still have more information to gain. But yeah, collaboration with the university is a key way for us to continue our research into sort of the future, if you like. And it means we get to hire lots more of me, which may or may not be a good thing, but yeah.
Thank you. So leading more onto that, what type of advice do all of you have for these graduate or undergraduate students trying to move into this industry, as well as support like the move away from animal agriculture in other ways?
Okay, that was a big, there's like two fantastic questions in there. One, advice to enter into the space, and two, what to do to help facilitate the sustainability factor of what we're all interested in doing here. So I think the first point is you're doing the right thing right now. You're educating yourself, you're meeting with folks, you're taking the opportunity to hear what we do every day in using this technology to change the world. And when you have an idea and you want to bring it to life, whether through your own company or through the actions of an employer or a partner or something along those lines, Ala's point of make sure you have your data, make sure you have made your case, and use your voice, use your voices. So I think you all are seeing some fantastic things academically, and you're doing some great things in your own kitchen. I love the folks that are working on kimchi fermentation and doing fantastic things using that technology, and share that with us all. Get out there and tell us what you're seeing as well. So two-way street, be open to listening and learning and seeing what we're all up to, and don't be afraid to ping us and share what you're doing, and show us how you think it can make a difference.
Well, my advice would be the opposite. Don't go as an intern to anyone. So you, as an intern, you'll be assigned something small, something nobody wants to actually work on. It's low priority because nobody believes you will cope. So what you can learn from that? Nothing. So nobody will let you work on something that really matters, because again, it's a top secret. So you will waste your time. Well, unless you're hunting for the line in the resume. I was there. So that's, but the best thing is as early as you can before you leave the university. Try to apply to accelerator. Try to run the small startup and fail. Fail because it will eventually fail. But through that, you will understand the whole cycle of your own company. What needs to be done? What can you do wrong? And nothing teaches better than our own failures and mistakes. And after that, if you make it quick, you still can get back to the university with all access to all the infrastructure that university has and give it for you for free. You will shift your educational process 10x. Then you will start listening to your professors way deeper. You will understand what is bullshit, what is really matters. That you will find the real area to apply your efforts. Through the learned process in the accelerator, you will find how quickly run the experiments to advance yourself way faster than you do them in the laboratories. And by the end of your education, maybe you will have already something in your hands technologically where you can apply again to the accelerator with the open eyes, understanding what to expect, how to use, and that will be your company. You will be the main shareholder. You will be hiring other folks, and there will be plenty of people willing to fund you. That would be my orthogonal suggestion.
And now I'll go a different step again, because I've never done any of that and had a startup and failed. I've always been the intern. I will say, I think the most important thing is to always be open to learning, which is probably a really obvious one. But somebody who hasn't worked in, 10 different companies, you've got to soak up what you can, put yourself in the right places and the right spaces to learn. And don't just stick to your area. Like, I love mycoprotein. It's my day job. It's my everything. No, I'm joking. But I do spend a lot of time with mycoprotein. But don't limit yourself to what you enjoy. Get yourself out in some difficult situations, and sort of make yourself feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I think as well, when I did my undergraduate degree and I was working as a student at Quorn, actually all of my learnings made more sense. And I would say that I became a better learner, a better student, and also a better employee by the end of it. So I definitely say hands-on experience is key, regardless of how you're doing that, whether you're having a startup and running it yourself, or getting that experience making someone's cup of tea and learning from them in the background. So yeah, I'd definitely say make yourself a little bit uncomfy and get out there and meet the right people, as Julie said as well. And in terms of, I guess the other question was how we can all reduce, move towards plant-based and move away from meat. I guess the biggest thing is educate yourself about how incredible the meat-free sector is, and how moving away from moving to plant-based away from meat is going to be really great for the environment. But also encourage people to try things. My dad is a pig farmer, and I've managed to get him to only eat meat twice a week, which is pretty impressive from someone who used to eat it every day. And it was purely from just sort of educating him about things and getting him to try the alternative. And now we don't even drink milk in our house, we just drink oat milk. So it's little changes and incremental bits, and sort of spreading awareness and the message. Because I think one of the questions in the box as well was, in the question box was the conception and the misconceptions, or how people view alternative proteins. And I think it's helping fight that stigma that it's an ultra processed food, or something that's new or different. And I think it's educating people that it's not scary, it actually tastes really good. So yeah.
And I suggest you to educate people as early as you can, when they probably the habits of eating meat not yet formed. So because if it tastes good, it tastes good. If I don't have the prehistory. And for me, the most vivid example, Chef Kit Morrison, fourth generation Sicilian butcher, and he is the culinary director at UT Austin. Right now is our advocate. And he says, if somebody tells me that a year ago, that I would tell him, guys, plant-based meat is way better. So that's, I would shoot that person. But right now, yes. So please introduce to anyone around us about the good tasting options. Okay? And once they, okay, I can occasionally start eating this. Okay? Occasionally it becomes a norm, it becomes a habit, and then step by step it will be changed.
Cool. Thank you all for all your wonderful insights. So we'll move on to Q&A now. I know people have answered a couple of these questions. So maybe we can go to this one. I think it's about the regulation of fermentation. So when you get approval from fermentation for these fermentation products, is it all lab-based proof, or is there any human-based evidence required, sort of like clinical trials?
Well, let me answer it in terms of from the food and FDA. So, and then Julie, since you went through this non-objection letter, you may dive a little bit deeper. So if you deal with food, so FDA requires you to diligently prepare food if it's made from the general known ingredients, and then you're okay to go. So that's as long as you just follow the good manufacturing practices. You don't need to certify anything. If it's something that never was used on our plates, then you go through this non-objection letter. And then let me pass the mic, Julie, to you. What's the procedure here?
So if you are introducing something that has not been used, so there's also folks that are using precision fermentation, which is a way of genetically modifying production to replicate products. So for example, if you have a naturally occurring dairy protein, but you want to manufacture that dairy protein without using a cow, and you want to do it in a fermentation tank, you would need to use precision fermentation to modify the host to get it to grow the protein. The output material is subject to be reviewed, and you want to go through the regulatory process in your jurisdiction. So if you're going to launch something in Europe, you want to start there and look at what do they require. Most of the time, they're going to require some sort of toxicology, whether you're in Latin America or whether you're in Asia. There will be a toxicology proof point where you will have to do lab-based studies. And most of the time there will be a non-human, but a living element to that. So there will be some factor to that, but it does matter. You have to look at where your regulatory approval, who you're going to seek approval from. So you'll want to start with things like EFSA, and you'll want to look, as Alice said, to, is this a novel ingredient? Is this something new? Have we put it in the human population before, or are we replicating using a new process? Because those processes, you still have to go through it, but it may be different. So the answer to the question is, generally it's not human studies, but they're, depending on the regulatory body, you will have a series of proof points that you'll have to demonstrate.
Yeah, I never seen the clinical studies for the food, so in my practice. Yeah.
All right, thank you. This is probably the last question. So is there a collaboration with farmers to obtain spent crop ingredients?
Obtain spent what ingredients?
Spent crop ingredients? Or I guess with breweries or something like that.
I'm not sure that's they understand the question. Collaboration, or can you rephrase it? I'm happy. This is my territory. Happy to answer, but
I think he's asking if you have like any partnerships or existing like partnerships with fermentation or breweries or farmers to obtain like your spent crop ingredients for.
So yeah, let me tell you the story, and that will answer this. So initially, when I was chasing and experimenting with multiple side streams, I have to use the U-Haul and pick up it from the offsites on my own. So asking them, the guys, can you spare? Can I buy it? Something. No collaboration, because for them it was something that, okay, you can take it. But then once we made our meat and we came to our brewery the second time, yeah, and they so, well, you're not already of taking it not the first time. So what are you doing this meat? And now it comes the phrase that's well, I will die with it. Meat from our sheet. So everybody laughed. Yeah, but after laughing, they escalated the case. Well, this crazy guy makes something tasty out of our byproduct streams. So it was escalated to the management level, management to their office there, and eventually they came out, understanding, wow, it's a huge opportunity for valorization, and they cannot sell it because there is very limited value of that on the market. They came with a strategic offer, that we can allocate all the volume for you. If you allows us to invest, we want to share the downstream profits. So that's the story that happened with planetarians. Yeah. So, and well, replicating to many others. Yeah. Yeah. So initially you don't expect much collaboration. So just do what you is their job, just to give it to you for your experiments. But once you have it, there's a huge value for them, because they generate those byproduct streams all the time. And this is where you can sit and discuss, and everybody would be happy to get this collaboration. The transportation costs also is not that there was initially very well thought, that maybe how much time I need to guess, and that's so it's unit economics works at the scale. So do not attribute your U-Haul and cost to pick up that one small bag. So on the big volume, it works. So yeah, that's how it works in our industry.
So I think, to further on that question, we have the opportunity to always look at our supply chain, to talk to our farmers, and to make sure that the input that we bring in is as valuable as we possibly can. And I think there's always the opportunity for some sort of collaboration, whether it's to better understand what's available to use, and then also maybe how to use it. So I think there's always, this is a naturally occurring process. So I think there's always going to be cost and risk, but there's certainly an opportunity for us to look downstream and say, where else could we do some work together?
And again, coming back to that $1 billion opportunity. So if you show it to everyone, everybody lined up, because it will eventually will require them to standardize the byproduct stream. So you want it consistent, volume, same type, all these things. And all this work can be done once everybody see the huge opportunity, so that's scary, and then you will see a real collaboration. But the first step is on you.
Cool. I think that's about all we have time for today. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar. If the panelists want to drop like some sort of contact information in the chat, just to reach out in the future, feel free. But yeah, we'll probably end this in a couple of minutes. So thank you for joining. And thanks to all the panelists as well.
Thank you everyone for listening, and hoping that next year you will be already speaking at the similar webinar and sharing your experience.
Cool. I think everyone dropped their emails in the chat. So if any of the audience members want to reach out, feel free.